How comfortable would you be sharing with researchers the content that you're viewing online or the content that you're liking or favoriting?
I would feel comfortable if I would feel comfortable sharing my information, especially if they are saying specifically the purpose of why they were what they were using it for. Um, about you guys sent questions and you said something about group chats or stuff like that. I think sharing that I would be fine with it, but I think the people on the group chat stuff wouldn't. So I feel like that would be hard sorry to share with other people, but with when it comes to what I see and what I like and stuff, I would be comfortable.
So it sounds like things that you can control that you're going out and liking, but if there's another person involved, that might be more challenging.
Yeah.
What about content that's a little bit more personal, like your own public posts or comments or your search history? Seth, is that something you'd feel comfortable with?
I think that I would feel comfortable sharing that with researchers, more because it's my active social media usage where I'm choosing to post that publicly already to my followers. So I think I would be more willing to share that information just because I've already, given it to the people who follow me.
Yeah. And then I know, Lizzie, you mentioned group chats involve somebody else. What about, even if it doesn't involve other people, what about more private content like photos or videos you've taken or messages that you share directly with somebody else? And do you want to go in and answer this one?
Yeah, so for photos, I wouldn't really mind sharing those. However, I think if it would help a lot if it was de-identifiable, if it was more anonymous, because a lot of the photos I have are with my friends. So if you were sharing my photos and some of the images of my friends were blurred out or something, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable. But generally, I would feel comfortable. So yeah.
Yes, this kind of, I think, leads me nicely into my next question. Thank you, Anne. And what could we as researchers do to make you all feel more comfortable sharing your social media data? So one thing I just heard was de-identifying the data. Are there other things you think we might be able to do? And I'll open this up to the group. Yeah, Seth.
I think what's important to me, just maybe this is more personal, but I think a lot could relate, is really understanding the purpose of the data being collected. I think knowing where my data is going, understanding where it's being published and for what purpose, I think would really help me in order to share that data.
Yeah, great. Anne, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so basically similar to what Seth just said, transparency, basically what's going to be seen, where it's going to go, who's going to see it, stuff like that. But also and anonymity, if that makes sense. I don't want everyone who's going to see it know that it's me, so I'm okay with it being shared, but I would also want it to be anonymous.
Yeah, definitely. Joni, I see. Oh, I'm going to go to Lizzie first because I see a hand.
I also would want to say maybe adding you could choose what content being shared, having options, I think would be a good idea, because I feel like some people might feel more comfortable sharing some data more than others. I feel like that would be good.
Yeah, so having agency over the types of content that you share. Joni, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with all that's been said. I would also think of really making it at any time I could pull out of it if I started feeling uncomfortable. And so knowing exactly what I've been sharing and when it seems too far to be okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, so being able, we had a presenter earlier who showed us a kind of summary that participants could access to see what kind of data they're sharing and also how they're engaging with social media, which I thought was so interesting. And so being able to, that transparency that you're all talking about, being able to see what you're sharing and then being able to withdraw if you stop feeling comfortable. That came up earlier too, this process of ongoing informed consent and being willing to or able to withdraw at any point. I'm curious, we talked this morning as we were actually practicing going through this data donation process that you can indicate how much you want to download. So you can share your lifetime history. You can go back a week, a month. I'm curious if your comfort might change depending if the content you're sharing is like all the content on Instagram, for example, or just a month or a week or this week. Any thoughts about that?
I personally, I would feel comfortable, but like then again, like I said before, if I was given like if it was anonymous and if I was also knowing like what's going to happen with my information, but I would feel comfortable.
So you would feel comfortable with, any much data, maybe not all data, but a lot of the data, as long as you know what it's being used for.
Right. Yes, exactly.
I think that leads me into another question I had. You're all teeing me up really nicely. What, kinds of purpose would feel good for you? How would you like your data to be used by the researchers? Seth, go ahead.
I think, I don't know, this is pretty obvious, and like obviously this is what all research hopes to do, but provide solutions. I think I struggle a lot with social media in general and its negative effects, and providing a way, whether that's an intervention of some sort or some way to help either limit social media usage or like help the time spent on the social media apps.
Yeah, thank you. Anne.
So I was going to say something like when you're researching something that's like behind the screens, kind of like things that people don't post a lot, you're being revealed to a lot of like real world problems that a lot of people don't publicize. So it gives you more insight to what's like actually happening like behind the scenes, if that makes sense. So it can like give you like a better understanding about like what's really happening.
Yeah, definitely. Joni.
I would feel more comfortable sharing my information if it was with people I knew were trying to like understand me better instead of like finding a solution to like just negative like impulses, just understanding why we have the impulses and then finding the solution. So it would make me feel more comfortable if they were trying to like see where like teens' minds were at through these things.
Yeah, so helping us actually learn more about the teens. Yeah. You've mentioned some solutions that we might need, helping teens either use social media less or use it in healthier ways or different types of ways. Are there any other kind of solutions or interventions that you're hoping for that might come from this data collection? Yeah. Bhavika, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you. So going back on the previous question, I think like researchers could look more into like usage trends, kind of like overconsumption and like what drives that, and how influencers are also playing a role in this. I think like if you collect data on that and seeing what types of media are kind of perpetuating this overconsumption and like negative self-comparison, for example, like all of these things can be seen through like trends of media consumption. So I think using that data, we could find solutions for that kind of, or understand it.
Yeah, it sounds like being able to learn more about the overconsumption could lead to even policy changes or, industry changes. Yeah, that's great. I'm curious, moving into my next question, we talked a little bit about wanting to know the purpose behind the research. Are there other things that you would want to know from the research team before agreeing to donate your social media for research?
I would want to know who's been viewing my information, honestly, because I feel like I would feel less comfortable, even though I would wish I wouldn't feel less comfortable, but I would feel less comfortable sharing it with like certain people rather than others. If I knew if it was like a bunch of teens were looking at my information, I'd be like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Where if it was like a few researchers, I'd be like, oh, I'd be more than willing to do that.
So transparency and who's actually accessing this data. Yeah, that's great. Bhavika, I saw you unmute, and then I'll go to Lizzie.
Yeah, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
No, you're good. We talked about wanting to know the purpose, but are there other things that you would want to know before agreeing to donate your social media data for research?
Yeah, other than transparency, which was mentioned, I think like kind of just the research study, like the purpose, the general purpose of it, and kind of what the researchers are expecting for the end results, so we know that what data is being collected. I think also knowing like what type, because there's like general data that can be aggregated, like likes and comments, or I guess likes. But there's some things that are like, or like posts, for example, that are really specific to a person. So paying attention to what data is being collected is important, because some can be kind of traced back to the person versus some are just like numerical. Mm-hmm. So I think I'd be more comfortable with numeric data, but yeah, I think being transparent on like what type of data, how it's being used is important.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lizzie.
I think that like also with the data, like when they have it, like how long they will be using it, because like if like they were gonna like delete it, like how that would happen, and like also like tying into what Jenny said, like who would be seeing it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Things you want to know? I'm curious about studies. Most studies that we do with teens, not all, but most require consent from a parent or legal guardian. If a study required parental consent, how might that change your willingness to join the study, if at all? Yeah.
So I think I would be more comfortable just because like if my parents were to like give consent, it's basically saying, oh, I'm okay with you doing that. So I feel more safe giving my information because it's, it's my parents gave me consent for that. So yeah.
Yeah. Other folks have thoughts on that?
Yeah, as somebody who's pretty transparent with my parents, I don't think it really affects my willingness to share that data, just because they already know, a lot about what's happening on my social media. So it wouldn't really be that much of an issue.
I also agree. I think that I would also like feel more safe if I had like parental consent, but like also like tie into like more of a general like thing. I feel like a lot of people, like kids, like don't always have the best relationship with their parents. So like if they wanted to donate, like it might be hard because like if they couldn't like if their parents didn't have time to like give consent or like any of those factors, or like they didn't want to but you wanted to do it because like you like support like mental health and stuff. I think that could be like an obstacle.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that's come up today, sorry, I'm veering from the questions I sent you guys a little bit. Question that has come up in terms of ethics is if we collect something that might concern us, right? There's some content that's concerning. And it's coming up for me now because you're all speaking about how having your parents or guardians involved might actually help you feel safer. If as researchers we came across content that was concerning to us, what would you like us to do with that? How would you like us to help keep you safe? Take a minute to think about it. Yeah, Joni.
I think I would feel more comfortable if you shared that information with me before my parents, because even though I do have transparency for the most part with my parents, I think many kids don't. And if also they found like unsettling things in their search history or viewing history, I wouldn't want my parents to know before I knew, because I would feel like I would want to figure out how to address it with my parents in my own way.
Yeah. Definitely seeing a theme of, transparency and providing that sense of agency to teens. in the research process? Any other? Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, I would add on to that, like, I think those who have that concerning content maybe would already be unwilling to share the data in the first place and most likely not consent to providing you all with that data. So, I mean, I think it would be a rare occurrence that you guys would find concerning data, but if that did occur, I mean, I think social media is such like a vast landscape of so many different, so much content and everything. And I've definitely stumbled upon, concerning things online that I'm like, okay, how do we regulate this? How do we fix social media in a way that can help benefit us as a society and me personally? And I think that it's important to collect that data, in order to solve those issues.
We talked about this a little bit. There's a question in the chat. What questions the teens themselves have about social media use and their well-being that you would like researchers to answer? And I know we've kind of talked about using these data to find solutions. So I guess this question is more about, what do you actually see as the problems here? Bhavika, yes, please.
I guess like saying, re-mentioning what I mentioned before, kind of things that we don't realize at the moment, kind of like fast fashion, for example, the things that you consume and you don't realize that it has an effect on how you live your life. For example, you see a certain type of fashion trend over and over again, you might want to buy those clothes. So these type of things, or like overconsumption, like I mentioned before. So kind of unconscious trends, or like, or for example, influencers as well. Like, what tactics, quote unquote, do influencers use that like we don't realize kind of indirectly influence us or unconsciously influence us? So yeah, the seeing like trends over like media and how media is being portrayed and how that can affect how we live our daily lives. I think that's an issue that we can address.
Definitely. So how we're being influenced, sounds like, by different forms of media. What do others think? What are some problems that we might need to attend to with this research, or challenges?
I think that, sorry, the thought kind of just slipped my mind. So.
No, you're good. All good. Okay. I'm going to move us on, but we can always come back to these questions. There's another question in the chat that I'm very curious about, and I've been thinking personally about it more and more. How do you all feel about, we talked about some of the data that you might be able to share. What about sharing conversation logs with ChatGPT or other forms of AI? It's becoming more popular. Yeah, Lizzie.
I think personally I would feel comfortable because I usually just use like AI to help me like study for things in school, like to help make like study guides and stuff like that. So I don't think I would feel uncomfortable sharing that information.
Thanks. Or maybe you all could think about some of your peers too who may use AI for other purposes. Are there any purposes that you think might make, even if not you, other teens feel more uncomfortable or hesitant? Yeah, Seth.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously like cheating in school is something I know my peers use AI to do. And, I think that would most likely make them not want to share their data with AI usage.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Bhavika.
I think that some people might use AI to like also ask personal questions, just kind of like a friend. Especially like people who might not have like a strong social connection with like, or like a big friend group or like close friends they can go to, they might just use like AI as just for advice in general, maybe like, oh, should I do this or this? So I don't think they'd want to share that personally because it's, of course, it's personal. So I think that might be a reason why people might not want to share.
Yeah, thank you. We've seen a lot of studies coming out about some teens using AI more as like therapists, right, or companions. So I could see that, potentially causing some concern. We have another question in the chat. Are you concerned that the results of these studies that we might be doing might be used to ban social media or implement age restrictions or content restrictions? And might that make you, might that cause a concern about your willingness to participate? Yeah, Anne.
So I feel like it might not get banned, but I feel like there definitely probably will be age restrictions. But I personally don't think that's such a bad thing because especially with like I had social media when I was like in 8th or 9th grade, and I feel like that wasn't really a good time to have social media. So I know that a lot, like right now, a lot of social media is like requiring like ID checks and stuff to make sure you're like at least 17 or 16. So I think that would actually be a good idea if there was age restrictions just for like the general well-being of people. Because I feel like some people start getting into social media a lot earlier than they really need to. That's kind of a hot take, but yeah.
Yeah, we want to hear all the takes. Yeah, thank you, Seth.
I personally think that, I trust the researchers and I trust the research that's going into making these decisions. So I think, if a decision like that were to be made, I would hope that it was made with, plenty of thought. And I hope that it would also be explained to teens, why this is being decided. And I think that another important thing is maybe to involve teens in this decision. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the trust that you have for research and, the point about bringing teens into these decisions as well. Yeah. Joni.
I definitely agree with what has been said. I think the restrictions idea is a lot better of an idea than the ban idea because although like there are these negative impacts of social media, I think overall it is more positive, even though it definitely has some big problems. But I also think like one of the problems of how this study would happen, like going back to a further question that connects to this, is that I think the people who would be willing to share data, because obviously the need for consent, would not have the more diverse and general like results that everyone would have. Mm-hmm. So it would be showing teens who like are willing to share their information, so may like have not be on their phone as much and not get into loopholes as much. And so I think that's something to like watch for.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something to consider. Thank you. Any other concerns about how this research might lead to things that you might not be as excited about, or any concerns about how the data might be misused? Okay. Oh, yes, Lizzie.
I think the only concern I would have is like how, like, as long as like it's anonymous, I feel like that was like the only concern I would have because I feel like the personal profile, like I wouldn't want any of my personal information to be like for them to have that, and I feel like that's would be like one of my biggest concerns.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I have 2 wrap-up questions that I'm going to ask each of you to answer. So I'm going to say the first one, and then I'll give you 5 seconds, 10 seconds to think on it. If you could write one rule that all researchers must follow when using teen social media data as part of their research, what would it be? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. And then if someone wants to raise their hand when they feel ready, I can start with them. Okay, Anne, go ahead.
I feel like I've already said this like twice already, but I feel like if researchers kind of gave me exactly everything they're going to do with my info, as well as like show me as well, instead of just like telling me, oh, we're going to do this, if they could also like show me like, oh, here's like what we just did with your information. Are you good with that? And also if they would give us like a choice on what to share, if that makes sense. Like if we wanted to share our photos, if we could pick what photos to share, or if we can pick what posts or likes, or, if that makes any sense. So just kind of like free range for us to pick, and also just like for us to know what's really happening with our information, because it's our information, so yeah.
Giving you a choice on what you can share and not share.
Yeah, exactly.
Choose not to share some things. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I'm curious, you mentioned, don't just tell me, show me. What's the best way that we could show you what we're going to do? How would you like that information presented?
Are you talking about like media types? Like how would you like transfer over that to me?
Or, would it be helpful for us to like go into the app with you and show you exactly how we're doing the, downloads and where it goes and how we
just be like, okay, so here we're gonna download your information here, and then we're gonna do that, and then like just like a step-by-step thing, kind of, right? Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right, Lizzie.
I also agree. I also think that like just full transparency is like a huge thing, that like also like who's seeing the data and all of that is like really important. And like I agree with Anne, like the like choosing is really big. I feel like that will have like more people willing to donate their data. And
yeah. Do you think you should be able to edit the data or like correct data before it gets downloaded or shared? No. Yeah, Anne.
I don't think so, because I feel like that would kind of skew the data a little bit. I feel like that's not really accurate if you're like able to change it, because then what's the point of this research if you're not giving you like the raw information? So yeah.
Great. All right, Seth.
I would say that anonymity is probably my biggest rule, I guess. Having the choice to anonymity in any studies. I mean, that might just be a personal preference, but I think that would help with, the willingness of more teens to be able to submit their data.
And it sounds like from the earlier conversations, anonymity for yourself and then also for others whose data might be collected through your data being collected.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Joni, one rule for researchers to follow.
I think my main ideas I agree with, like have already been said, like the transparency, anonymous, and like all of those things. But if I would add one thing, I feel like it would just be very important to like feel like I was part of something that a lot of people are doing and that will turn into a solution. So it doesn't feel like I'm just sharing my data for no reason, but it's going to a goal and others are doing it in a sense of like more community almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. Not just the purpose, but that, there's other people. I'm part of this community contributing in this way. All right, that's awesome. My last question, I think, is too repetitive. My last question was, if you finish the sentence, I'd be more likely to donate my data if, but I think you've all probably answered that. Does anyone feel like there's anything that we haven't said out loud that should be said, that you'd like to be said before we wrap up? Bhavika, I know that you popped out, but you're back in. So yes, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a Wi-Fi issue, but going back with the previous question, I'm not sure if I've said this before or if someone else has said this. But I think like one rule that's important would be to, I'm pretty sure it's been said before, but transparency of the data being collected. I think having aggregate data being collected is like fine, and I think at least it can be traced back. But again, like me personally, I wouldn't be comfortable with having like chat logs or like DMs or posts being used as data, because it's like my own personal thing, like my own personal data, and it can be traced back to me. So I think having like numerical or just aggregate data would be okay. But
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the one rule they should have is like be transparent.
Being transparent and then emphasizing this is anonymous, presented in aggregate, can't be traced back to me. Absolutely. Well, it is 4:30, so I'm going to wrap us up for our last speaker. But thank you all so much for being here and joining us and sharing your really insightful comments. And we're really happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye.